Yes, it's What a Boast, a celebration of Reeves and Mortimer. Please welcome your hosts for this podcast, MJ Price and Paula Wiseman.
Hello and welcome to Quite a Boast, a podcast dedicated to the work and genius of Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer. My name is Matt Price, founder of the Reeves and Mortimer Depository of Curious Stuff Facebook group.
And I am Paula Wiseman, creator and founder of the Divine Comedians podcast.
We are joined today by an actor, writer and director who went from making funny videos with his friends, including Tony Way and Steve Burge, to a wide and varied career in television. From appearing as Swiss Tony's sidekick Paul in The Fast Show, to Fun at the Funeral Parlour, Down the Line, stroke Bellamy's People, A Year in the Life of the Year, and the multi-award-winning Dodger. He has also brought us spoof mockumentaries profiling Brian Pern and the Kemps, and genuine music documentaries profiling his beloved Queen. He has appeared regularly with Jim and Bob throughout the years, whether ensconced nude within their transparent desk or providing the unsavoury comments for a certain sweaty fox. Please enter the Novelty Island paddock, Rhys Thomas.
Hey!
Hey, Rhys.
Hey, Rhys!
Wow. Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks so
a
much.
lot.
Thanks for making a podcast about the funniest people that exist. I think that actually everyone I speak to, all of them know that they're the best. They really are. And they still make me laugh all the time. And they are the best, the funniest things I've ever. I mean, I know people go on about Morecambe and Wise and the two Ronnies, but they can't. I don't think so. They cannot touch the ingenuity of those two, and they're unbelievable. And I was just thinking the other day about the underfloor rotating Return of the Jedi badge.
Oh yeah,
and that was the first time I thought, what the. I mean, there's when you get to a certain age, when you start at a certain age, when you go, this is the thing that made me laugh more than anything else in the world, and I can pinpoint it, and it is, are you hungry? Do you want some salt? Right? And I've never seen, that was it. That was the moment. I mean, I'd laughed at Only Fools and Horses and 40 Towers and all those things. And again, they were fun. I laughed at them, I laughed at the slapstick of it. And then again, later on, when I was an adult, you laugh it all over again in a different way.
Yeah.
But as a teenager, that was the thing when it was 1993. I remember BBC Two, that and it was that and The Day to Day around about the same time and I feel the same way about that as well as I do about them. I mean, Chris Morris, but Reeves and Mortimer have got this, for me, the funniest thing I'd ever seen. In the way I love Queen and all that, and when you're a teenager and you're growing up, you sort of really cling on to something, and whether it's music or we had my parents didn't have the Goons or whatever, right? But they weren't like rock and roll.
Yeah.
But there was something about the comedy side of things that spoke to me personally more than any music that was going on at the time, and I thought they were the best.
Yeah, no, it's weird, isn't it? As a kid, you're watching stuff, and your parents are like, "What is that?" And they just don't get it.
No, they didn't really find. I mean, it's funny. They didn't really find. I mean, Reeves Mortimer sort of was mad. It was mad. I remember on a different topic. I remember when The Day to Day was on. I said to my mum, "Have you seen the news?" And I said, "Quick, have you seen what's going on?" And she went, "Fucking hell!" It was like Bomb Dogs, yeah, that one. And she went, "No," because she's quite gullible. Yeah, it's funny enough, years later. My friends at school, what sort of bonded me and I'm skipping away. I'm talking about nonsense, but me and myself, Tony Way and Stephen Burge were three friends at school. We all love Reeves and Mortimer, and that's how we all sort of bonded. And we wanted to make comedy videos together around about that time when we were sort of 14, 15, 16. And they used to come around to my house. We make these videos. And one time there was my mum's very gullible, and there was a thing on about aliens invading. It's really bad. Channel 5 had just launched, and there was a Channel 5 film on. So it was like 1997. I was in the sixth form or whatever, and we said, "You've got to see the news." And she ran in. She thought aliens were invading. But they're the sort of things. But the point being is, it was the silliness of Reeves and Mortimer and how clever they are. They are very clever people, and having worked with them, you see it's not just, it looks random and half-assed, but that's part of the charm. There's a lot of work that goes into that, and even down. So I started as a runner on working with them, because I was a massive fan,
Mm.
and I couldn't believe I sort of got in with them, and they were they were very kind to me and very nice and very like they were probably one of the best experiences I've ever had, and at the time, you see, it's like, there was nothing quite like it. Even something like Little Britain at its peak, or anything recently. I mean, there's nothing really as big as that was at that time in the 90s
Mm.
in comedy wise in England, and it felt like you were part of something really special, and nothing's ever really been as high as that.
Yeah, well, I guess because as you said, you and Steve and Tony making videos. I guess if you were that age starting now, you would be putting them on YouTube.
Yes.
And because obviously the internet age has arrived, and that's where people put comedy nowadays. There isn't everyone staying on a Friday night and watching a BBC Two show and talking about it the next day. Not to sound too much like an old fart, but Vic and Bob were probably one of the last to have that in the late
Yes.
90s.
But I do think, funny enough, I think that the younger people who've grown up, I know from my children who are like teenagers, they quite like the idea, the fact that retro things are coming back. I think people are a bit bored, having everything on the plate almost
Mm.
available. You still have to nowadays. You see, the thing is, when Netflix first started, there were about 4 programs and 10 and loads of bad films. Everyone got it because they want to watch House of Cards. Now there are thousands of things, and you still have to find it. It's no different to looking through channel hopping, but there's no radio times to tell you what's on. And I think that people still want to find what their own thing. And for me, it was Reeves Mortimer was that. And I remember, I had a really, I had a happy childhood. I enjoyed, I liked comedy, and my brothers and my parents we always watched Fools and Horses. Comedy was a big thing in our house, and you know, I remember I was, on a Thursday night, I wouldn't go out because Absolutely Fabulous, French and Saunders, or Smith and Jones or whatever would be on between one and BBC One and BBC Two on one night. That's what's changed now. You see, is that you would have 2.4 children, one foot in the grave, go over to BBC Two for Reeves and Mortimer or French and Saunders, then come back to BBC One at 9:30 for something else. But there was comedy led the schedules. Now it's the smallest thing you see, and I think that people are laughing at silly. The world has become you've been framed, isn't it? Or on TikTok or YouTube, and short bursts of things, and not long form.
Yeah.
The thing back then, you had to be in to watch stuff,
Yes.
or you'd record it on a video or something, but there was no kind of catch up or anything like that.
No, but look now, look at how if you're into something like Severance, which we are, you can't watch it on Friday night or when you watch that, and when you watch it at 9 o'clock when everyone's home. It's on all day, but you still watch it when everyone's home from school or work or whatever, and that's why what's going to happen? It's a different topic, but eventually it's all going to go back to how it used to be. In a weird way, just in a different platform. You can watch things when you used to. There's no, who should be scared of JC, what are they called? Who's the video company?
JVC.
JVC and people like that. They should worry because there's no place for them. But television is still going to come back round. TDK, Kodak, fuck them.
Yeah.
No, you can buy video. People are buying video recorders and stuff again now, aren't they? It's all very retro.
Well, here's a little thing. If you're going to watch a Reeves and Mortimer, don't buy the DVD. Get the old video and watch it on an old video, and watch it on a TV tube video telly, because everything I buy remastered looks shit. So I just watch it on the old television on how it should be.
Looks too polished. Looks too polished, doesn't it?
Having said that, a different thing. If you look at the Fools and Horses Blu-ray, it's unbelievable, but that's a different story. It's been remastered, and all the film stuff looks great. And it'd be nice to see the Reeves and Mortimer stuff. A lot of it was shot on film. If they've still got it at Channel X or whatever, to remaster all of that stuff and see all the outtakes.
Yeah, because one thing Jim and Bob have never been asked about it is having DVD releases with all extras and commentaries on there, because they never did. You've never seen the outtakes. So they've turned up on YouTube a few nowadays, but they never released box sets.
No,
which is a shame.
It's hard to get hold of them. And the Bang Bang series and the Smell. I mean, when we did, that's a whole different thing. But like when that happened, because I didn't do the first series, I didn't do Smell of Reeves and Mortimer.
Well, should we go back to when you started?
Yes.
Yeah. So was it Shooting Stars first of all with Vic and Bob?
Yes, I started on Shooting Stars. What happened was, I was obsessed with them, and I was in the sixth form, and I tried to get tickets to see Shooting Stars, with me and Tony and Stephen and my friends from school. And Glyn was another one, and Stephen Holbrook. There were 4 friends. We were in a group we were called Stay Alive Peppy, was our comedy group, right? And we'd make these comedy sketches. It was purely all in the sixth form period when we were in the first year of sixth form, and we get really bored in those periods in between. There'll be like double history. We go, what are we gonna do? And we go a bit mad and film videos. Anyway, and we watch Reeves Mortimer. And so I tried to get tickets, and I rang the BBC, and they said all the audience research, the research number, the audience number, all gone, no tickets available. That's how popular it was, you see. And then they said, why don't you try the production company called Channel X? And now growing up, Channel X was a big thing because you saw at the end of all the fun, all the best programs was Channel X. Jonathan Ross's The Last Resort, all those programs, and also Reeves and Mortimer, whatever. So I rang them up, and I got through to a woman called Lisa Thomas, and this was a telephone number, Channel X, and Lisa Thomas answered the phone, and Lisa Thomas now go further forward. She's a massive agent, looks after John Bishop, Mackenzie Crook, all the northern ones, Jason Manford, and all that lot. She had everybody. And as an agent,
yeah.
And anyway, so she answered the phone, and I said, "Oh, I'm trying to get tickets for Shooting Stars." And she said, "Oh, I'm afraid that there are no tickets. It's not available." I said, and I just said at the very end of that conversation, "But you haven't got any work experience, have you? Right?" And bearing in mind our school, which was like a comprehensive in Wickford in Essex. They always said, I remember saying when they said about doing work experience, I'd say I like to work in television. They go, oh, no.
Yeah.
There's, do something else.
Be a hairdresser.
Yeah. My brother's a hairdresser, and I could have got a job with him. Anyway, but they didn't, there was no way, there was no sort of avenue there. And so anyway, I just purely asked that question. And I owe it to her, Lisa Thomas, because she said, let me just find out. And I said, what's your name? I said, I'm Rhys Thomas. She went, oh, I'm Lisa Thomas. And for a joke, I went, oh, are we related? And she sort of laughed a bit, but not much. And he went quiet for a bit. And then she came back on the phone. She went, can you come in and meet us? We are looking for work experience. Can you send in like a CV? Now, I just done my GCSEs, and I sent off, what you have, all you got at that time is I worked in a Laserdisc shop, right? In my spare time. And I sold laser discs, and I'd been in a school play, and that was it. I had quite good results in school, but not brilliant. Anyway, so I sent those off, and then they said to come in. So I went in. I met Alan Mark, who we still work with, who produced all of their stuff, and they had an office right next door to the Magic Circle in London, in Euston. And I got on a train. Like, the idea of getting on a train by myself, I was like 17, going to London. I had to take a day off school. My dad's a teacher at my school, right? And I said, my history teacher was like, you can't take that time off. And my dad went, oh, I'll have a word. He's Welsh. And so they said it's okay to take the time off. So I went and met them, and they gave me the job. And initially I had 2 weeks work experience, right? And they like me. I think they like me because Alan Mark, who ran Channel X, is very down to like why they got on with him as well. Because at that time, bearing in mind, all production companies were quite posh, right? Not in a bad way. I'm telling you, they were all. You had Hat Trick, you had Talkback, and they were all slightly run by sort of Oxbridge type people, Mulville or Jeffrey Perkins and Peter Fincham, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that was sort of covered, and they weren't like that. I wasn't that type of person. Anyway, and so I got a job with them, and I met them. Sorry, and they said, oh, we know they like me, and they said, would you come and work with us? And now I could not believe that. So for the first time, I did 2 weeks on it, and I could not believe my luck. I went to the television centre. And to me, Television Centre was like, it still is. It's such a shame that's gone. That's the biggest crime of the century.
Yeah.
When I went there for the first time, bearing in mind, we were a generation, we grew up. I would not leave the house over the summer holidays or on a weekend. I would not leave the house till 12:15 when Going Live finished. My day could not begin until I'd watched the entire program.
Yeah.
So you sort of felt like you knew the whole place and the history of it all. And so I couldn't believe I was there. And then I was a runner on it, and they gave me all the boring jobs, but I didn't care because I couldn't believe I was doing it. And I remember when I first met Jim and Bob, and I couldn't believe his name was Jim. It was confusing. And I remember thinking Bob was quite serious, and he was more sort of because he'd be there's a lot of that listening and thinking, right, on the set, and they said this is Reese, he's sort of working here, and and Jim was a bit more kind of like, and the way he sort of is was more he doesn't really think so much. At that point, he doesn't have to he doesn't analyze things too much. I don't think
Yeah.
from my own observation, he would sort of like he would draw the funny stuff and the art and do all that, and everything would look like his sort of signature artwork.
Yeah.
But Bob would be the one thinking about even down to the and Mark Mylan was the director, who's now obviously very famous, and it was and but together they were. Bob would almost sort of co-direct it with Mark Mylod, and he would sort of direct the sort of comedy side of it, and Jim would sort of sit there and be more just sort of naturally impulsive. But
Yeah.
Bob was the sort of the warrior. My observation at that time, whether it's right or wrong, was that Bob was one who sort of thought a lot more at that point about it, the production side of it. And I was thought that, but early on the writing stage, which I never was part of, I presume it was half and half, or maybe a lot more of the kind of madder ideas would have come from Jim. But when it came to the set, it seemed to be run a bit more by um, Bob. And he'd go, "What do you think?" And he'd go, "Okay, what do you think, Jim?" He'd go, "Yeah."
Yeah.
you know. And my job at the time was to get their Rennies for them and go to the shops and buy Rennies. And they had these mugs that said Ivavulu and Uranu on them, right? And they would have to drink. They both would drink weak lager, Skull, and I had to go and get a Skull and pour their drinks up and put them under their desk. So when they were drinking the mugs, it was Skull in the mugs. So I did 2 weeks on that. Is this boring or is this all right?
No,
No,
no.
this is amazing.
You're not the first one to mention the wheat lager, by the way. That's come
Yeah.
up a couple of times.
And then I hope this is not boring. Anyway, so
No.
it comes to the end of the first week. Now, here's the other thing. When I got there and we were working on the set and television centre, I'm running around and there's so many people that I then worked on for years after that. And so the producer was so it was Alan Mark and Channel X, and then the script editor was Charlie Higson.
Mm.
And Charlie would sit on the and I remember, and years later I became a script editor of Shooting Stars, and me and Shane Allen, who was head of comedy for years, we would write a lot of the questions on like the third, fourth series of Shooting Stars. But
Yeah.
I sort of learned everything from watching them. And and then Charlie was the script editor, so he would basically be, and he'd produced Reeves and Mortimer, Smell of, and he'd produced all of those things, and he'd obviously been in the Fast Show. And in fact, I think the Fast Show later on, when I was in the Fast Show, that was next. We'd film the two. I would go from one set to the other, where we were doing a bit on the Fast Show, then I'd come through and do a bit on Shooting Stars, and same with the live show years later. But it all sort of began there, and then I remember Matt Lucas was wearing a T-shirt that said "Made in Heaven." And I'm a Queen fan. I went, "You like Queen?" And he went, and that's how we bonded. And I still see him all the time. I see him a lot more than I lived in America for a bit and we saw him all. We are massive Queen fans. So
Did you, according to the good people of Wikipedia, you sometimes stand in for George Dawes during rehearsals? Is that
So
correct?
I remember exactly what happened. What happened was, and what made them want to put me in things more. There was like Matt Lucas wouldn't turn up till like 4 o'clock because he didn't need to. His call time was at 4 o'clock, but they would be in at 10 o'clock rehearsing. It was quite, again, what Shooting Stars looked like, just like a very simple set. They were there all day, and there was a lovely man called Steve Webster who would do all the props and reason all, and they'd go like, "We need this made and that made," and they'd be doing the camera moves. Bearing in mind, in a sitcom, you'd rehearse all week and then get into the studio for 2 days, or you might do some pre-records. Or in a sketch show, you'd be there for the whole week filming, and then you might film it that evening. But with this, it was all done in one day, and you do the pre-records. So you'd film like, I remember the sketch. Is there a bomb on at Bog? Lethal Weapon. All that was done early in that same day, and they'd edit it that fast so it would be played that night in the VTs. It was quite mad. It was all done in a day, and so all that would. So the first thing in the morning, you come in and then film. You do all the VTs. I've got this camera script somewhere of all the stuff. So you'd film all that in the morning. And bearing in mind, I was just, I was only like 17 at the time. anyway, yes, you'd film that in the morning, and then you'd do the studio recording in the afternoon. So Matt would come in late. So one time they said, oh, "Would you just stand in for him?" And at that point, it's the first time, and I was shitting myself. And they go, "Just bang the drums," and I'd go, "What?" And I go, and you know when you have to, they're there, Reeves and Mortimer on set, going, "And what the scores, George Dawes, right?" It's only a practice, but there are still like 5 cameramen, 6 cameramen, and all the crew sitting around.
Yeah.
And I just banged the drums. I went, Susan. I shouted, Susan, right? Because of Doctor Who, William Hartnell. I went, Susan, like this, okay? And they like, and I don't know, and because that's the kind of mad thing Matt Lucas would do, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why I did it anyway. It's not even that funny, for fuck's sake. But they love time. Anyway, and then
channeling Roger Taylor and William Hartnell in one.
yes. And then at the end of it, so we got to the end of the 2 weeks. So the 2 weeks work experience I did, we'd filmed 4 episodes. So there were on a Thursday and a Friday, there'd be 2 episodes, right? And next to each other rather than weekly. And then I came to the end of that, and then so I met Charlie, and Charlie was really nice, and they all called me Workop, was my nickname, Workop.
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, you mentioned the pilot, It's Ulrika.
Yeah, so we did it. So we did again. We were still at school, and so we did that 2 weeks work experience. I left, and here's what happened. At the last day, I gave a videotape of our comedy videos, one to Charlie Higson and one to Paul, one to Bob. And
Right.
I said, I know it's a bit embarrassing, but do you mind watching this, right? And I don't know. I shouldn't. I feel still embarrassed doing it. Anyway, about a month later, I get a letter from. First thing was, Lisa Thomas called back and said, because they did 4 shooting stars. There was a summer break, and then they were going to come back in the autumn and do the whole series. And I got a phone call over the summer, and there were 2 things they said. First thing was, it was Lisa Thomas, and she said, Bob and Jim really liked you. Would you come back to the whole series? And that was 8 weeks of school I had to miss, and I had to miss every Friday a double history lesson. That's why I didn't get. That's why I got a C. I was predicted an A, and I got a C because I missed the whole of this Elizabethan period. And I was supposed to catch up. My teacher said, "You better catch up." I went, "Yeah, but I'm at the fucking BBC week. I'm 17, going what? Going to the Groucho Club with them all afterwards, going, fuck me, this is unbelievable. You can't quite believe it's happening." And they were really so inclusive and friendly and nice. And then they put me in more things, and I would be in little VTs and little sketches and stuff, and I was a well devil on the Christmas special. That was my first ever thing. And I remember, and then I was in that, and then at the same time, I'd never forget again. I had a letter one morning. I was going to it was history. We were going to the Houses of Parliament. I had a letter that came through. The days where the post came before 7 o'clock or in the morning, and there was a letter, and it was from the BBC. It was from Charlie Higson. I remember that. Still got the letter, and he said, "Paul and I watched your video, and we were pleasantly surprised at how funny it was. Would you like to do some work with us and work on the Fast Show Christmas special?" So I then worked on the Fast Show Christmas special as a runner, and I also worked on Shooting Stars as a runner. But then they around about the same time, and they put me in it. So I was like an extra in the background and all that. And then that was in 1996. And that's my first time I was on television, was on Shooting Stars as the World Devil.
Yeah.
Ian Kelsey. I saw Ian Kelsey, who's in Emmerdale. Years later, I saw him at something. He went, "All right." And I thought, how do I know him? And I remember the World Devil. I mean, he's like the equivalent of Nick Berry, isn't he? He's like Nick Berry, but not Nick Berry.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So that was that, and that was then. But I was still a runner at that point.
So was it the next series of the Fast Show that you became Paul?
Yes, then it was Paul. So in between that, so in 1990, I think it was 1997, right? So I'd done my A levels, and it was April, and we were that period where you haven't left school, but you've finished your A levels, you're doing them. My dad had a phone call, and he said, "I just had a phone call. Bob Mortimer's rang." And he went, and he was all, and he didn't know what to say. And he said, "Will you give him a ring? It's his number." And I thought, fuck, because even though I knew them, like I didn't know them that well to speak to have a conversation with. he rang up and said and I spoke to him on the phone and I couldn't believe it. He went, "Oh, Reese, you all right?" I went, "Yeah," and I couldn't believe it. He said, "We're doing a pilot for Ulrika Johnson, and we really like we did these characters called Danson, the Billy Bollocks. They were like Essex builders based on my dad's friends. My dad had this mate who was a builder who was like, "All right, mate, hey, doing Billy Bollocks." He was all like, he thought about Billy Bollocks. And me and Tony would play these two builders, and they had a son called Danson who was not who was sort of like not like them. He was sort of like quiet and I mean, nowadays you look at it, you couldn't do it now, but it wasn't really intended to be a character who was sort of like he was just very shy and sort of like belittled by the overbearing parents. And we did it, and they said, "Can we do that?" And they it's funny because they really laughed at that sketch, and Reeves Mortimer wanted to do that, and then whereas the Far Show liked this other characters, these other things we did this spoof. Um, it was called Him Next Door, and there was a character. It was basically a Never the Twain parody. I mean, even in 1996, it was fucking 20 years old. We were doing these parodies. Well, I haven't changed.
Put your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, exactly.
My pulse is so far behind. Anyway, so so we did. So they both like different aspects of what we were doing, whatever. And then so we did this it's Ulrika pilot, and it was really funny. And I think what happened was it got a massive viewing. It got like 5 million viewers, and we had a good time. And our bit was quite they enjoyed our bit, but it was a bit the whole program was there was a bit of a backlash against her, I suppose, or. Nowadays, it'd be more acceptable. I think it was very strange seeing a TV personality acting in that way. And I thought she was really funny. They were really good. The problem was a very simple problem, probably looking back, is it was so Reeves and Mortimer that the humor that it was very weird when other people do it. And
I said exactly the same thing about Monkey Trousers as well,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
we'll get to later on when other people are doing Vic and Bob lines.
yes,
I don't know. There's just something missing.
the only people who kind of got close to it, and I think they did get close, and they'd learned by then was something like was in Titty Bang Bang,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
he was in, and that felt like it was that they'd learned not to be too Reeves and Mortimer with it, and it was more Bob anyway rather than Jim.
Yeah.
And they had other writers, and it had the sensibility of it without feeling too Reeves and Mortimer. Whereas that felt very Reeves and Mortimer. It's Ulrika.
Yeah.
But it still did really well. And we all thought we'd have like a series, and that was the first time where you go, "Oh, okay, that's not happening." And weirdly enough, the studio recording was a very odd experience, very quiet. We had a very bad audience, and it was at Wembley rather than the BBC or somewhere like that. And it was an odd night, and it went on and on and on. And
There's a lot of costume changes. I think it must have taken ages to film.
It's a
She
long
painted
time.
blue at one point.
Yes, and I remember David Williams was there, and he was in some sketches, and Matt Lucas, and I'm pretty sure that am I right? I don't know. I thought that the League of Gentlemen people were involved, or they came that night to a screen. They all because they were around a lot because they would come and watch. That was the thing about those screenings of the Reeves and Mortimer. On a Friday, when we do a studio record, they would come as friends of Matt and Dave. They would, and that's how I first met them. Reese, Steve, and Jeremy Dyson didn't necessarily come, but I remember we'd all talk about James Bond and Doctor Who. That was so fun. Oh my God, thinking back, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah. And you next popped up, I think, if I get it right, in Randall and Hopkirk.
Yes, that was a one-off thing. That was after we'd done Shooting Stars. There was a bit of a gap, and then we did Bang Bang Reeves Mortimer. That's when I was.
Yeah,
That was in the
first.
That was the first time I ever I had my first curry in life with Reeves Mortimer. I was always a fussy eater, and we were staying in Eastbourne for that, and we did the thing called the club, and
Mandate,
and then we went to Edinburgh, and funny enough, Bob Mortimer and Channel X paid for us to go to Edinburgh in 1998. And it was around about the same time we just filmed Reeves and Mortimer, and what we had terrible nights. Like it was an odd experience because we got it really cheap after everyone goes home in Edinburgh. So we were there after the bank holiday, and no one came.
Yeah,
that's so cheap. Anyway, but what kept us going, we all shared a flat, was all this. And Bob came and watched and supported us, and there was a little documentary made about us that was never shown, funny enough. But he came and really supported us at that time. And then we did a live show as well, a live show, Shooting Stars and Far Show Live. And it was Bob who said to me, take a year, because I was going to go to university, and he said, take a year out and see how it goes, because, we'll hire you. And to be fair to them, that everything I ever did, everything they did, they always got me in it because I took this year out. And he was, Bob is one of the kind, I mean, looking back at that period, he was, I think it was, maybe it's because we were sort of not from that background, and they could see that we genuinely cared about what we were doing, about the comedy, and we were hard working and all that. And we weren't, other people come along as runners and they'd be a bit like, what am I doing this for? Everything I did for them, I didn't mind because I was so happy to be there. And I think he could see that. And I think for me, he's at that time in my life, he's the most generous person I'd ever met. How he helped, me in my career and all that. And he did the same for Matt, and he did the same for Lucy. In terms of how they really championed the people he works with. He's not one of these people who's all about himself. He always is quite very generous as a performer and as a person, I think.
Yeah, it's like paying it forward, kind of.
Yeah,
You're very loyal to people that they like.
Yeah. So you mentioned Bang Bang. Let's go back to that and Mandate. We've had Tony on, and we've also had Mike Wattam on, and heard their side of the story. Mike, I think he said that he had you guys staying in a not as nice a hotel as the rest of the crew, and he kicked off and had you moved.
That's right. That's true. I love it. So that's absolutely true. We didn't know. We were young. We I'm happy where we were. We didn't give a shit. And he went, no, I'm not having it. I remember that. And I remember Jim had just got a brand new car, and he would go out and driving it really fast around Eastbourne, around the coast. Yeah, and we went for an Indian one night, and then we watched the videos back. And but I think this was after. Because then we did the live show was really fun because that was a proper sellout. That was like a massive thing, and that was so that would have been in 1998, sort of January, before Bang Bang then.
Yeah.
And that was massive because that was genuinely like everyone was there, like really famous people would come. It was like the hottest ticket. And years later, I remember Matt Lucas said to me, "Oh, he said you met Jude Law." I went, "Did I?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "You remember you were talking about Queen?" I went, "What?" He went, you were talking to him at the Fast Show live in the green room about Queen, and he was talking about how his kids like Queen. You were talking to him. I went, I don't remember this at all. He went, that was that actor friend of yours. He went, yeah, that was Jude Law. And those people all would come to it. Leo McGregor came to. I remember seeing Leo McGregor's cap. He came to see it, and all that. And then we would get all excited about all these really famous people who, come and see the show.
Yeah.
And the one, and then, but I'd always have to get the train back to Wickford from Hammersmith at the end of the night and be a bit sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really fun. That was a really good time.
Yeah. So you're on Bang Bang and you are naked under a desk.
Yes.
So logistics of that on a recording evening. Are you walking onto the stage in that state?
I had a little pack on, and what happened was originally that was me a whole character, and I'd come out and have a whole load of dialogue, and I was
homunculus.
Yeah, and the only thing we filmed, I'd go, oh, can I have some rhubarbar? Was the thing. I'd always ask for rhubarbar, right? And there was gonna be a whole load of stuff. And they said, oh, we'll film these inserts because you could easily have done them as a cutaway after the recording. They never got round to them. So in the end, it was just like an obscure thing of a man in a desk, and that's what. And there was no answer to it. But I've got some loads of outtakes of. I should put them online. I've got loads of. I used to record the Ring Main at the BBC. Well, that was not filmed at BBC. That was filmed at LWT. That was, and I would record all the Ring Main. So I've got loads of Reeves Mortimer and Fast Show stuff. I've got some. Alan Partridge filmed. I would record, the tape in the dressing room, and I would record all of that. And there was loads of bits where in between recording breaks, I'd do rude things naked underneath nothing that rude, but sort of like pretend stuff underneath the desk. And so that was kind of like it was just fun because you got paid to be there. But in the week, you meant you'd spend more time with them afterwards, and it was fine.
Yeah. So I mentioned you're in the Randall Hopkirk after that in the Hammer of the Gods.
That's right.
Simon Pegg and Tony.
Yeah. That was so Charlie had gone off to do that, and then I hadn't seen them for a while. That was like 2000 or something. And we done our own little things. We did a sketch show called Barking for Channel 4, and but things weren't going very well. We hadn't really had much success, and it was a bit of a lull. And I remember thinking we'd all been really high on doing things with Reeves Mortimer, and then that stopped, and then our comedy, this thing Barking, didn't come back. And so all of us were feeling a bit low, and then we had a phone, and we weren't quite sure what was going to happen next. And then we had a phone call from just offered us to be in that, me and Tony, and that was nice because Simon Pegg was in Spaced at the time. He was nice, and Guy Pratt, who I've known for quite a long time, because there's a bit of a crossover because he's in the music industry and plays with Pink Floyd, and I know that he liked Brian years later. He liked Brian Pern, and he was in the years later, but we met him there, and that was a nice day. It was just one day filming, and it was fun, and that was a massive show, BBC One and all this, so that was good. And then Charlie directed that. Charlie produced that and wrote it, and that was directed by Mark Mylod. And then I didn't see them again for a bit, and then they brought back Shooting Stars, and then I got the job. I was a script editor then because Charlie was too busy.
Yeah.
So I was a script editor. So I got to, and then that's when the Fox came on and all that, and it was on BBC Two and BBC Three, and I did a thing called Front of the Funeral Parlour in between, and
fantastic show.
And they like. I remember showing them a bit of it in the dressing room once, or making that, and I think they were quite. And Bob had once said in some interview how he liked the program, so it was nice he got us back to do that, and that's where the Fox came from, and that was made up. And I used to get quite drunk. It was very odd because you had like Will Self, and there's an outtake where I go Mike. I say about Mike McShane. He's a Swiss.
Oh, he's lovely.
No, but have you seen the video?
Yeah, on YouTube, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, I was a bit drunk, right?
We just given free reign with the Fox, then you had to say what you wanted.
Probably, let's just say, and a lot of it was for their own entertainment, and it would often get cut out, right? I mean, there's some stuff on there I can't believe. Like, I once said, I'm reading. Oh, I can't even. I mean, now I get it. When you're younger, you say things. You go, I would never do that now. There's a line where I go, I'm reading Anne Frank and having a little Tommy Tank as the Fox, right? And I go, and I'm thinking, I mean, I cannot believe, and that got in. That was in it. But obviously, the point being is it's a fox, so it's not the person.
Yeah.
It's a fox talking. But oh my god, that was really fun. That was a really fun series. And
one of my favourite parts in that series, favourite moments, is when you're when Paul Whitehouse is chosen to do the end game.
Yes,
behind the bar.
The
king.
Again, can I say how genius they are though in terms of their ideas? That he's roped up, and he always resisted being in it because he said, "I don't want to be in it because." See, here's the thing: a lot of comedians didn't want to go on it because it's tricky. Because your job wasn't to be funny. Your job is to be. That's why people like whoever it might be on there. There was a thing that was cut out. I mean, Robbie Coltrane was on. They covered me in stink bombs, right? And I was a GI, and it wasn't even used. But and it was just that. What made me laugh about that was the TV audience would not get that I stank of G. I mean, I was covered in. So I was doing Shooting Stars next door, Fast Show next door, and they said, "What time do you finish that sketch?" And they scheduled it. So I did this Swiss. No, it was like a Suit You sketch. I had to run next door to the next studio where they were filming that, right? And I had to be covered in. I was a GI covered in stink bombs. And they poured stink bombs all over me, right? And then then it was Jim's idea that when I came up behind Robbie Coltrane and go, "Hey, what are you doing here?" He'd go. They wanted him to go, "What the fuck is that smell?" But I'd gone away by then, and it didn't really work. So the whole thing was cut, right? But I was going, and I thought, because because I still think like Cracker's the best. He's one of the funniest actors that ever lived, and the best actor. And Cracker is the pinnacle. When I worked with Christopher Eccleston, and you think about the best program apart from Rhys Mortimer, the other thing I loved was Cracker. How good that was, and meeting him was really special. And then I'm covered in stink bombs, and it was like a really weird moment. He must have thought, "What the fuck is this?" There's a lot of those moments where you go, "What is this?" I remember doing a whole Comic Relief one year where they hosted it, and it was and again the audience. It was in that crossover period where it stopped being funny and became a light entertainment program like it is now. Comic Relief isn't what it used to be, is it? It's
definitely.
It's different. and it was like a crossover period, and we all laughed, but the audience weren't really laughing, and it was another one of those moments where no one really got what was going on. But I
Yeah,
love that they don't care. They don't react to it. Like especially Jim, he doesn't go, "Oh, well,
no,
this isn't funny." He just goes, well, "It's funny," and that's what I love about him is he doesn't care.
yeah, oh yeah, but
Nice way to be.
Paul on those pulleys, Paul, it's
Yeah.
just a great image. Yeah,
There's another one where I'm throwing. I'm a baby in a pram,
yeah,
and I'm throwing. Is that what's that? I can't remember who's on that one. And they're trying to get something. They're playing like it's either like black carrots at me or something. There's something
yeah.
in oil and they're throwing at me. I mean, again, there's nothing like that.
No.
Kelly, I love that. I always think they should be on Christmas Day on bit like the way that why aren't they on all the time still?
No, it's a crime. It's a crime.
Definitely.
Yeah, so you're in a monkey trousers a few years later.
Mm.
And we spoke to Les Dennis recently because you're in a sketch with Les Dennis, one of the Bob's
I?
brilliant, one of Bob's estate agent sketches, and you are a couple.
Am I?
Yeah, you and Les Dennis are a couple being shown around a
You
house.
sure?
It's on YouTube. I didn't dream
Me
it.
and him? Are you sure?
Les remembered it vivid. It's one of his highlights of his career, he said.
Oh, blimey. Yeah.
I can't remember this at all.
Yeah,
It's on his CV.
I'll send you the link. Yeah.
All I remember is doing I remember I replaced Reece Shearsmith because he was in a thing about there was a cop thing with Mark Benton and
Neil Morrissey.
Morrissey. And I remember replacing him. And I remember doing another sketch with Steve Coogan. He's a man with the curly hair in the thing. I can't remember doing that at all. I'm quite proud of that. Is it any good?
It's one of
You have to check it out.
It's one of his finest characters, Alistair the estate agent, I think.
I cannot remember doing that at all. Oh my God.
Right, I'll find you the link and I'll send it to you.
Flashbacks.
It
I
exists.
love that. Me and Les Dennis.
You and Les Dennis were a couple.
Oh my God. Wow.
Imagine.
That was a bit of, why is that a bit of a blur? We did another pilot, that was never shown. It was so good. It was called, have you ever heard of a thing called, it was called the something chamber, the Star Chamber. Have you heard about this? Oh my God. We did a pilot called the Star Chamber. And I can't remember much about it, but it was all filmed in Kent somewhere, and we were in a castle. And and it was Jim and Bob, and oh, I loved it. We should find it. It's a whole pilot that was never shown.
Wow.
And I remember Jim turns up in like a car that's made like an egg. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And it's like people do. It's like a debate program, but it's not debate. And I was like the judge. I was judging if it was. I can't even remember the premise, but it was really funny. And
Yeah.
I think it was after Shooting Stars. It was a new pilot they did, and it never got picked up. I'd love to find that because it's really.
Yeah.
Oh, we should. Why?
Track that one down, Reese. Track that one down.
It's got to be out there
Track
somewhere.
that down. Anyway, that came in between. That came after Monkey Trousers, and then in between something else. Then I didn't really work with them after that for a long time until they did Titty Bang Bang, and then I didn't really work with them until they were in Brian Pern.
Yeah, Mulligan O'Hare.
Yeah, 'cause
Reunited.
they're my favorite characters, and they did that, and they were really funny. That was a laugh because they worked. They were in House of Fools and stuff. I love that too.
Yeah.
And their last series of Smell of Bang Bang, not Bang
Well,
Bang.
when we spoke to Simon Day about Brian Pern, and apparently that was Peter Gabriel's favourite part of the show was Mulligan and O'Hare.
It was, and it was actually it was Bob Mortimer who first, because Bob Mortimer knew I liked Queen. He said, "Do you like Genesis?" And I said, "I don't really know them that well. I mean, I thought of them as of." I remember that video, of the Fox Head, when I was younger in a documentary, and it's to scare the shit out of me.
Yeah.
On some old grey whistle test or something, going
Another sweaty fox.
scary. Yeah. And then Bob Mortimer said, "Oh, if you like Queen and you like Queen 2 and all that, right, you should listen to Lamb Lies Down on Broadway." And at the same time, I met, and I know another prog fan was David Baddiel, who also said you should listen to it. I think Bob bought me the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway for my 25th birthday. He did.
Wow.
There you go. It's just come back to me. He bought it for me for my 25th birthday and he gave it to me. And that's how I first heard it. And that's where Brian Pern all came from after that. Fuck. Again, isn't it funny how you talk like this and you remember it? The other day I was saying I want to be hypnotized just for fun, to go, not to turn into a chicken, but just to kind of go back and remember things.
Just remember Les Dennis.
I can't remember Les Dennis. I mean, Jesus. I tell you, I do remember. I remember Les Dennis having a fight with
Yeah.
Bob Mortimer.
Yeah, we talked
There was
about
a
that.
boxing match, and there was also then Ricky Gervais had a boxing match. I used to know him quite well more then, and he fought Grant Bovey.
Yeah.
But coming off Grant Bovey feeling really down because he was all upset, going, "I lost the fight." I was going, don't worry about it. You're a really good looking man. You know, like Ricky Gervais, he's not technically good looking, is he? You know, you got that, and you're married to Anthea Turner. Just think about that. Never mind about Ricky Gervais. I know he's
Your career will go to strength, Grant, and Ricky Gervais will just disappear off the radar.
just get another flake for fuck's sake and have a photo taken with it. Grant Bovril. His real name's Grant Bovril. Yeah. Oh my God. All those times. It was quite bad because they set up this company called Pet Productions. They made loads of sort of slightly mad programs.
Mm,
And then, yeah, that's so
yeah,
funny. Yeah.
yeah. But it must be, even for you now, when you're doing Brian Pern and Dodger, having people like Simon and Paul, Chris Eccleston, etc., just thinking, is the schoolboy in you is still there thinking, bloody hell, I'm working with these people and I'm telling them what to do.
Yeah, but the one thing is though, what unites here's the truth, and to bring it back to Reeves Mortimer again, because that's what this is all about. Every single person I've ever worked with, like all of them, all love them, and like Christopher
Yeah.
Eccleston loves Reeves Mortimer. And they'll go. This is very. There'll be times. There's a moment. There's a few Dodger moments where Chris Eccleston go, "This is fucking Vic and Bob, isn't it?" This moment, and he would feel, he'd say the same thing, and also putting him with so in the last episode, which was much more comedy than all the others, the last one we did
Mm,
with Paul and Christopher Eccleston, which both are brilliant comedy. I mean, Christopher showed a side of himself that I don't think anyone's seen before. How funny he is. You
mm,
don't really see that on screen. You think of him as an intense, serious actor, and I think he'd also say himself like the comedy he did in Doctor Who was not really suited to it. He was much better. I think he was much better. The drama side of it in Doctor Who, he was brilliant at, and I think the comedy they forced him to go a certain route that he would say he wasn't quite comfortable with.
mm.
Mm.
And what's so nice about Dodger is you can see he makes me laugh more than anything else, and he would always have he's brilliant at line, and he's a very funny and real as a person. He's a funny person, and all of them all like Reeves and Mortimer.
Yeah.
And that sort of unites people.
Yeah.
And like I think now, now Bob Mortimer is famous because of um, "Will I Lie to You," and I still and they all talk about him all the time. It's he's on TikTok, his clips and all that, and all that comes from he still appeals. I tell you what it is, it's the child in him, I suppose, that hasn't really grown up, and he's never nasty or rude or there's nothing offensive. If Bob Mortimer did something where he was, I mean, I remember watching the Catterick and thinking there's a sex scene in Catterick, and I remember going, it didn't suit, it didn't for me, it felt wrong because I didn't really like that. For me, I didn't like them going down that route of love and relationships, and some of the funniest things that they've ever done are in Catterick, but as a when they become grown up and it becomes a bit sort of not childish is when
Yeah.
I find it doesn't quite work for me.
But some of the cult of Bob nowadays with Gone Fishing and the books and Would I Lie to You, there's a whole generation of fans. I don't mean generation as in youngsters. I think a lot more middle-aged people who watch more mainstream Sunday night TV have discovered him and now love Bob, who may have not been Vic and Bob fans. They're
No,
Bob
no,
Mortimer
because
fans.
I remember at the time they were so considered to be. I mean, at the time they've become mainstream now. You see, I mean, I remember nicking a quote from Tony Way once said about how you know Vic and Bob mainstream found them. The fact is did a series called they did a thing called Families at War, which was like their attempt at a sort of a date Saturday night game show,
Yeah.
and it was almost ahead of its time, really. And you look at things like Taskmaster and all that stuff. That all owes a lot to Reeves and Mortimer, right? And I think that they were sort of ahead of their time. But now it's all caught up because even like now they're so because they've sort of got this charm and this sort of childlike charm that's not offensive. I mean, I honestly think if you were to put the last series of Big Night Out on BBC One at 9 o'clock, people would watch it and really enjoy it. It was on BBC Two. It was, like all comedy programs, you get less and less money as time goes on, and you have to make do. but they're quite good at making do because they're inventive with how they do it. But you know, the first series of Shooting Stars or Reeves Mortimer, sorry, Smell of, cost a fortune. I mean, the sets it's on film. It's the sets, the costume, the makeup. I remember going in with them to Carlo Manzi's, which was this big costume design place, and you go in with them. Oh, that was the best when you go around and they would say, "Well, what we're going to wear," and you'd all go around and look at your costumes. They'd try all these different. I mean, that was the best. Looking, that was one. I forgot about that moment. That was very good. You'd go in and we did, and you'd have a costume fitting, and they'd just run off and go, "What about this?" And Kinky John, I remember that Kinky John that was in first came about being in It's Ulrika. We went to for It's Ulrika. We went to the costume store called Carlo Manzi's. It's a huge place, and they were trying all these different glasses, and he put all these on, and he was got, and he started doing that character with the the Marlon Brando sort of thing. These boys are wonderful guys. That character, and they all came from. It was in a bit of It's Ulrika, but it all came from going around. They would literally go, "What are we going to do with this character?" All right, but Jim would do his drawings, and then they'd bring them to life. But then they'd walk around the costume store, and that's where they'd find things, and then they'd put a wig on, and then go, "There you go."
But before we finish, I just want to just personal note, thank you for Dodger because it's massive in this
incredible
house.
series.
My kids loved it.
Yeah.
I assume there's not going to be any more. I assume they got too old, the kids.
They're too old. No, because Lucy and I we wrote it together. Originally, it was me. I did it on my own, and then Lucy wrote one of the best episode is one she wrote on her own actually with Julian Barrett, and that was like where he has to pretend to be somebody else. What's so fun about that is it was an outlet to do. You're left alone to do your own thing a bit more, and yeah, they're all too old now. And also, we started to run out of our. When we did 14 of them, the last one was so we felt was like the best one. And there's a danger that you can do. I like the idea that John Cleesing of only doing a certain number, and I think when you do that many, and it took a lot of time, a lot of effort, they're hour-long episodes or whatever. And I actually thought, what more can we both felt? What more can you do? And they're too old, and you couldn't really replace Billy who plays Dodger. He's so good, but I think we did this, we ended it on a nice end. And we could do more. I mean, the BBC wanted to do more, but it's just they needed money we needed some more money from America or somewhere like that. But the door's always open. But at the moment, we kind of want to stop the children's stuff.
That's what I love about your work, Rhys, because you don't get pigeonholed into one thing.
Very diverse.
You do your documentaries, your Kemps, and your Brian Perns, and then you'll do kids' TV, and then you do a drama.
Yeah.
I think it's good to keep moving on. If Dodger went on any longer, or we did another series like that. I mean, there's no harm in coming back and doing it a bit later. Like, at the moment, I'm quite keen on doing something like Thomas Midnight Garden. I think that could be quite fun if you had a Dodger touch to it. But you don't want to follow up with. I always think of like Queen albums. You don't want to do the same thing twice. You want to do something completely different next time, or so. And even if it does take time, it takes longer to get ideas off now because it's not as easy as it used to be.
No.
There's not a lot of money in the comedy side of it, and but we're keen to do explore different areas, but using the same talent and same people. We want to do what we missed. We really want to make something quite silly and funny again. When we first started, we'd turn up and film just in our own house with the Kemps was all filmed in our house in Norfolk we just bought, right? And then because we had no money to make it, and there was a nice sense of fun making it because Dodger's got more money involved. But the last one actually didn't cost as much. We did it much cheaper, much faster, and it was so much better as a result. Sometimes a lot of money's wasted in television. It's a bit like the money. It's like the money wasted on the NHS with middlemen. Let's get political. I'm joking. The day that they're cutting pips.
Finish on a high.
Yeah. No, but I think sometimes you can waste a lot of money. We on Dodger there'll be trucks outside just because the company it was made by Universal. They go, let's just have some trucks, but actually you don't need the trucks. I've always said no one ever laughed at a crane shot, and they cost a lot of money. Or a drone, fucking drones. How bored am I of drones? Another drone shot. It's fine for animals when you want to see from above how a crow flies, but really, the human perspective is not from above; it's down below. So why are you showing us from above? It doesn't do anything.
The only room for drones is gone fishing.
Yeah, that's fair
scenery.
Enough.
Yeah,
that's fair enough. No, that's allowed.
Yeah.
That's the only program it's allowed on now.
Yeah. But thanks so much for joining us, Rhys. That was quite a boast.
Cheers, Rhys. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening to this edition of Quad a Boast. Special thanks to Matt Lucas for permission to use the Peanuts music as our theme tune, and thanks to Ed Lewis for this edit. Thank you to Jake Chesham for permission to use the photo from his 1995 shoot of Jim and Bob in our various online locations for the podcast. And of course, thank you very much to Jim Moyer and Bob Mortimer, without whom this podcast, well, it just wouldn't exist, would it? Remember to check out Paula's Divine Comedians podcast as well, and to join the Reeves Mortimer Depository of Curious Stuff Facebook group. And I think you'll agree that really was a lot of fun. Goodbye.